a time-traveling designer in ancient Ethiopia. Hook, what if you woke up 1,000 years in the past, surrounded by a world so alien it felt like another planet, with only your modern knowledge to survive? Imagine Chloe Evans, a 25-year-old fashion designer from New York, ripped from her fast-paced life and dropped into the heart of ancient Ethiopia in the year 1000. No smartphones, no electricity, just a civilization scratching by with rough, itchy fabrics that scream discomfort. How does a city girl with a knack for style turn a medieval market into a runway? In this thrilling tale, you'll discover how Chloe's bold designs spark a revolution, face impossible odds, and uncover a mystery that could change time itself. Stick around to see if she conquers a kingdom, or gets trapped in it forever. The air was thick with the scent of dust and roasted grains as Chloe Evans blinked against the blinding Ethiopian sun. One moment, she'd been sketching her latest collection in her cramped Brooklyn apartment, the hum of the city outside her window, her coffee still warm. The next, a strange, shimmering light had swallowed her whole, spitting her out onto a rocky plain where the horizon stretched endlessly under a sky too vast for her urban heart to comprehend. Her sketchpad was gone, her phone dead, and her designer boots were caked in red dirt. It was the year 1000 and Chloe, a 25-year-old fashion prodigy from New York, was utterly, impossibly lost. She stumbled into a bustling market in the heart of Aksum, a city of stone obelisks and mud-brick homes, where merchants hawked spices, leather, and coarse linen that looked like it could double as sandpaper. The people around her wore tunics and wraps that hung heavy, scratching their skin raw in the unrelenting heat. Chloe's own outfit, a tailored blazer, silk blouse, and skinny jeans, drew stares, whispers, and a few wary glances, as if she descended from the heavens or crawled out of a nightmare. Her first thought wasn't survival, it was fashion. "These people," she muttered, dodging a cart piled with coarse wool, "are in desperate need of a glow-up." Chloe wasn't just any designer. Back in New York, she'd been the talk of Fashion Week, her bold patterns and daring cuts earning her a cult following on Instagram. She'd studied textiles at Parsons, interned with top designers, and dreamed of launching her own sustainable fashion line. Now, stranded in a world without sewing machines or synthetic dyes, her skills felt like a superpower and a curse. The locals' clothing wasn't just outdated, it was impractical, heavy, and frankly, an aesthetic crime. But as she watched a woman tug irritably at her stiff, shapeless tunic, Chloe's mind sparked. "I can fix this," she thought. "I can make them feel beautiful." Her first challenge was communication. The market buzzed with a language she didn't recognize, Guizi. She'd later learn, the tongue of the Aksumite kingdom. But Chloe had always been quick on her feet. She mimed, gestured, and flashed her brightest smile, earning cautious nods from a group of women weaving baskets under a woven canopy. They pointed her to a cluster of looms where men and women worked with rough flax and wool, their fingers calloused from hours of labor. The fabrics were sturdy but uninspired, dyed in muddy browns and faded yellows. Chloe's heart raced. She saw potential, raw, untapped potential. Using charcoal and a flat stone, she sketched a design, a flowing robe with intricate, hand-stitched patterns inspired by the geometric motifs she'd seen on Aksum stone carvings. The weavers watched, curious but skeptical, as she mimed threading a needle and layering fabric. One woman, whose sharp eyes and quick hands marked her as a leader, stepped forward. Her name, Chloe would learn, was Zala, a master weaver with a reputation for fierce pride in her craft. Zala didn't trust this strange woman in stranger clothes, but she saw something in Chloe's sketches, a spark of something new. Days turned into weeks as Chloe immersed herself in the market, bartering her knowledge for food and shelter. She taught Zala and her team how to soften flax with river stones, creating a smoother, lighter fabric. She experimented with natural dyes, indigo from plants, ochre from the earth, blending colors that popped against the dusty landscape. Her first creation, a sleeveless tunic embroidered with swirling patterns, was a revelation. When Zala tried it on, her usual scowl softened. "This," she said, touching the fabric, "feels like the wind." The market buzzed with whispers of the sky woman who wove magic into cloth. But not everyone was charmed. A merchant named Tawadros, whose wealth came from selling the same drab linens for years, watched Chloe's growing influence with a scowl. His stalls, once the heart of the market, now stood half empty as crowds flocked to see Chloe's creations. She jokingly called the market her Aksum Fashion Week, a quip that spread like wildfire, earning laughs and curious glances. Tuwadros, however, wasn't laughing. To him, Chloe was a threat, an outsider disrupting a system that had enriched him for years. He began whispering to other merchants, planting seeds of doubt. Who is this woman? Why does she know so much? Is she a sorceress, or worse? Chloe, oblivious to the brewing storm, was too busy dreaming bigger. She envisioned collection, robes that drape like liquid, shawls that caught the light, designs that married her modern flair with Aksum's ancient artistry. She didn't just want to survive. She wanted to thrive, to leave a mark on this strange world. But as her reputation grew, so did the whispers. And in the shadows of the market, a pair of eyes watched her every move, belonging to someone who knew more about her arrival than they let on, a secret that could unravel everything. What was that shimmering light that brought her here? Was it chance, fate, or something far more dangerous? And as Chloe's designs began to change the market, she had no idea that her greatest challenge was yet to come, one that would test her skills, her courage, and her very place in time. Chloe Evans stood at the edge of the Aksum market, her heart pounding with a mix of exhilaration and dread. The sun beat down on her makeshift stall, where vibrant robes and shawls hung like jewels against the drab backdrop of the ancient city. Her designs, light, flowing garments with intricate, hand-stitched patterns, had become the talk of the town. Women whispered about the Sky Woman, who wove beauty into every thread, while men bartered fiercely for her creations, eager to gift them to wives and daughters. But beneath the buzz of her newfound fame, a storm was brewing, one that threatened to unravel everything she'd built in this strange, ancient world of 1000 AD Ethiopia. Her unlikely ally Zala, the sharp-eyed master weaver, had become her anchor. Zala's workshop, a cramped, open-air space shaded by palm fronds, hummed with activity as Chloe taught her team modern techniques she'd adapted to their limited tools. She showed them how to layer threads for stronger, softer fabrics, using a makeshift loom she'd rigged from wood and stone. She introduced double-stitching for durability, a trick she'd learned at Parsons, and experimented with natural dyes to create bold reds and deep blues that shimmered in the sunlight. The results were breathtaking. Tunics that draped like silk, shawls that caught the breeze, and cloaks that felt like a second skin. Chloe, ever the New Yorker, couldn't resist a quip, calling their creations couture for the Aksum runway. The weavers laughed, not fully understanding her words, but catching her infectious energy. The market was transforming into something electric, a place where people didn't just trade, they performed. Women strutted in Chloe's designs, their confidence blooming as they shed the heavy, scratchy linens of old. Men lingered longer at the stalls, drawn by the vibrant colors and the murmurs of Sky Woman magic. Chloe's nickname for the market, Aksum Fashion Week, had caught on, and she leaned into it, organizing impromptu displays where Zala's apprentices modeled the latest pieces. The crowds ate it up, bartering goats, grain, and even rare spices for a single embroidered shawl. For Chloe, it was a dream come true, a chance to flex her creativity in a world untouched by fast fashion or corporate greed. She felt alive, as if she'd been sent here for a purpose. But not everyone shared her vision. Tuwadros, the wealthy merchant who'd once ruled the market, watched from the shadows, his jaw tight with resentment. His stalls, piled high with coarse linens and dull wools, were now ignored as customers flocked to Chloe's vibrant displays. Tuwadros was no ordinary rival. He was cunning, connected, and fiercely protective of his status. He'd built his fortune by controlling the textile trade, bribing local officials to favor his goods and strong-arming weavers into exclusive deals. Chloe's arrival had upended his empire, and he wasn't about to let a strange woman in stranger clothes steal his power. "She's no Sky Woman," he hissed to his allies, a group of merchants who shared his disdain. "She's a fraud, a witch spinning lies with her needles." Tuwadros's whispers spread like wildfire. Some in the market began to eye Chloe warily, their admiration tinged with suspicion. Was she truly a gift from the heavens, or something darker? Rumors swirled that her dyes were made with forbidden magic, that her designs carried curses. One night, as Chloe worked late in Zala's workshop, she found a crude symbol carved into the loom, a jagged spiral, a local warning of ill fortune. Zala's face paled when she saw it. "Tawadros' work," she muttered, her voice low. "He wants you gone." Chloe, brushing off the chill down her spine, forced a laugh. "Let him try. I've dealt with worse critics at Fashion Week." But Tawadros was no mere critic. He began sabotaging her supplies, bribing suppliers to withhold flax and dyes. One morning, Chloe arrived to find her stash of indigo plants trampled, the vibrant blue powder scattered in the dirt. Her temper flared, New York grit kicking in, but she refused to back down. She scoured the hills with Zala, foraging for new plants, and worked late into the night to recreate her dyes. Each setback only fueled her determination. She wasn't just fighting for her designs. She was fighting for her place in this world, for the right to exist in a time that wasn't hers. Her resilience paid off. The market was soon abuzz with her latest creation, a sleeveless robe with gold-threaded embroidery that shimmered like the Ethiopian sun. When Zala's apprentice, a shy girl named Kiros, modeled it at the market, the crowd gasped. Kiros, usually hunched and quiet, stood tall, her eyes bright with pride. Chloe felt a surge of joy. She was changing lives, one stitch at a time. But her triumph was short-lived. As the crowd dispersed, a shadow fell over her stall. A towering figure in a crimson cloak stood before her, flanked by guards with spears that gleamed in the fading light. It was Mekonnen, a royal emissary, his face stern and unyielding. "The queen has heard of your talents, Sky Woman," he said, his voice like gravel. "She commands your presence at the palace. You will create a gown for her, to be worn at the Festival of the Stars in 3 days' time. It must outshine all others, or you will answer to her wrath." Chloe's stomach dropped. 3 days? She designed under pressure before, but this was no New York showroom. The Festival of the Stars, she'd learned, was Aksum's grandest event, a celebration of the kingdom's divine connection to the heavens. The queen's gown would be seen by thousands, a symbol of power and prestige. Failure wasn't just a bad review. It could mean imprisonment, or worse. Mekonnen's eyes narrowed as he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And beware, Sky Woman. Tawadros has the queen's ear. He claims your work is a deception. Prove him wrong, or you'll wish you'd never come to Aksum." With that, he swept away, leaving Chloe gripping the edge of her stall, her mind racing. 3 days. Limited resources. A rival plotting her downfall. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, that strange, shimmering light that had brought her here pulsed like a warning. What was it? Why was she here? And what did Tawadros know that he wasn't saying? Chloe turned to Zala, who stood pale but resolute. "We can do this," Chloe said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "We'll make a gown that'll make their jaws drop." Zala nodded, but her eyes flicked to the carved spiral on the loom. The stakes were higher now, and the market's whispers grew louder. Tawadros wasn't just a jealous merchant. He was a predator, and Chloe was his prey. As she gathered her team, sketching designs under the flicker of an oil lamp, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching, waiting for her to falter. The next morning, disaster struck. Chloe arrived at the workshop to find her best loom smashed, the wood splintered beyond repair. Her dyes, painstakingly mixed, had been dumped into the dirt, and a new spiral was carved into the workshop's wall, larger and more menacing than before. Zala's apprentices whispered nervously, their faith in the Sky Woman wavering. Chloe's heart sank, but she clenched her fists, her New York hustle kicking in. "We're not done," she snapped, rallying the team. She scavenged wood from the market, bartered for a new loom, and worked with Zala to salvage what dyes they could. Every hour counted, and sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford. As the deadline loomed, Chloe pushed her skills to the limit. She designed a gown unlike anything Aksum had seen, a flowing, multi-layered robe with a fitted bodice, embroidered with star-like patterns that mimicked the night sky. She used every trick she knew: pleating, draping, and a daring neckline that would have turned heads in Manhattan. Zala and her team worked tirelessly, their fingers bleeding from the intricate stitching. But Tawadros wasn't idle. He spread rumors that Chloe's gown was cursed, that wearing it would anger the gods. Some of Zala's apprentices began to waver, their fear outweighing their loyalty. The night before the festival, Chloe sat alone in the workshop, the gown nearly complete. It was a masterpiece, shimmering under the lamplight, but her hands trembled as she stitched the final threads. She was exhausted, out of resources, and running out of time. Worse, she'd overheard a merchant whispering about Tawadros' plan to sabotage her at the festival. What was he plotting? A public humiliation? Something worse? And then there was the mystery of her arrival, the shimmering light that had brought her here. She'd caught glimpses of it again, fleeting and faint, in the corners of her vision. Was it a way home? Or a trap? As dawn broke, Chloe stood before the gown, her heart a mix of pride and terror. She'd poured everything into this creation, but the real test was yet to come. The Festival of the Stars would decide her fate. Would her gown win the queen's favor, or would Tawadros' schemes destroy her? And what was the secret behind the light that haunted her dreams? One thing was certain: Chloe Evans wasn't going down without a fight. What's next? The stage is set for a heart-pounding climax at the Festival of the Stars. Will Chloe's gown dazzle the queen, or will Tawadros' treachery bring her down? And what does he know about the mysterious light that brought her here? Stay tuned for a showdown that will leave you breathless, as Chloe faces the ultimate test of her skills and courage. The dawn of the Festival of the Stars broke over Aksum like a golden promise, bathing the ancient city in a glow that made the stone obelisks shimmer like sentinels of a forgotten age. Chloe Evans, the time-displaced fashion designer from New York, stood in Zala's workshop, her hands trembling as she draped the final folds of the queen's gown over a wooden frame. The garment was a masterpiece, a multi-layered robe of deep indigo, its bodice fitted to perfection, embroidered with swirling, star-like patterns that caught the light like a constellation woven into fabric. The neckline, daring yet regal, dipped just enough to turn heads, while the hem trailed like a comet's tail. It was a gown that screamed power, beauty, and rebellion, a piece that could have graced a Manhattan runway but was destined for an Ethiopian queen in the year 1000. Yet, as Chloe stepped back to admire her creation, her heart pounded with dread. Today was the day she'd either cement her place in this ancient world or lose everything. The Festival of the Stars was Aksum's grandest celebration, a night when the kingdom gathered to honor the heavens and their divine connection to the queen, who was seen as a living bridge to the gods. The entire city buzzed with anticipation, streets alive with music, dancers, and merchants hawking everything from roasted meats to polished beads. The palace, a sprawling complex of carved stone and woven tapestries, loomed at the city's heart, its courtyards packed with nobles, priests, and warriors. Chloe's gown had to outshine them all, or she'd face the queen's wrath, imprisonment, exile, or worse. And lurking in the shadows was Tawadros, the cunning merchant whose sabotage had already cost her looms, dyes, and the trust of some of Zala's apprentices. His whispers of curses and deceit had reached the palace, poisoning the queen's ear. Chloe knew he had a plan to ruin her today. But what? And why did the mysterious shimmering light that brought her here keep flickering at the edge of her vision, like a taunt from another time? The morning was a whirlwind. Chloe and Zala, her fierce weaver ally, worked frantically to transport the gown to the palace. The streets were chaos, crowds jostling, drums pounding, children darting underfoot. Chloe clutched the gown, wrapped in a protective cloth, her eyes scanning for Tawadros' spies. She'd overheard whispers of his final move at the market, a scheme to disgrace her before the queen. Was he planning to ruin the gown? Frame her for some crime? Her New York grit kept her moving, but fear gnawed at her. She had 3 hours until the queen's presentation, and every second felt like a countdown to disaster. At the palace, Chloe was ushered into a chamber draped in crimson and gold, where the queen's attendants awaited. The air was thick with incense, and the women, clad in heavy linens, eyed Chloe with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Zala stood by her side, her presence a quiet strength. But even she tensed when the head attendant, a stern woman named Salam, inspected the gown with a critical gaze. "This is unusual," Salam said, her fingers tracing the embroidered stars. "The queen expects perfection. If this fails, Sky Woman, you'll wish you'd stayed in whatever strange land you came from." Chloe forced a smile, her voice steady. "It'll be more than perfect. It'll be legendary." But perfection was under siege. As Chloe prepared to fit the gown on the queen, disaster struck. One of Zala's apprentices, a nervous girl named Leah, who'd been swayed by Tawadros' rumors, burst into the chamber, her eyes wild. "The dyes," she gasped. "They're cursed. I saw Tawadros pour something into them last night." The attendants froze, their faces paling. Curses were no small matter in Aksum, where the gods' favor was everything. Salam's eyes narrowed. "Is this true, Sky Woman? Have you brought ruin to our queen?" Chloe's heart sank. The dyes. She'd mixed them herself, painstakingly, after Tawadros' earlier sabotage. Had he tampered with them again? She tore open the cloth wrapping the gown, inspecting it under the light. The indigo shimmered flawless, but doubt crept in. What if Leah was right? Before she could respond, Tawadros himself appeared, sweeping into the chamber with a smug smile, flanked by 2 palace guards. His crimson robe swished dramatically, and his voice dripped with false concern. "My queen's attendants, I warned you of this woman's deceit. Her dyes are unnatural, her designs an affront to the gods. I've seen her chanting over her work, summoning dark forces." The lie was bold, and the attendants gasped, stepping back from the gown as if it were poison. Chloe's blood boiled. "That's a lie," she snapped, her New York accent cutting through the tension. "You've been sabotaging me from the start, Tawadros. You're scared because my work's better than your dusty rags." The room fell silent, the attendants shocked by her audacity. Tawadros' smile faltered, but he recovered quickly, turning to Salam. "Test the gown," he urged. "If it's cursed, the gods will reveal it." Chloe's mind raced. A test. What did that mean? She'd heard of Aksumite rituals, fabrics burned or soaked to prove their purity. Her gown, delicate and intricate, wouldn't survive such a trial. She needed to act fast. "Let the queen try it on," she said, her voice firm. "If it's cursed, she'll feel it. If it's not, you'll see its beauty for yourselves." It was a gamble, but Chloe trusted her work. She'd poured her soul into every stitch. Salam hesitated, then nodded. "Bring the queen." The room buzzed with tension as the attendants prepared, and Chloe's heart pounded. She glanced at Zala, who gave her a subtle nod, her eyes fierce with loyalty. But as the queen's arrival drew near, another blow landed. Leah, trembling, confessed to Chloe in a whisper. "Tawadros paid me to lie. He's hidden something in the gown's hem, a charm to make it tear during the festival." Chloe's blood ran cold. A charm? She checked the gown, her fingers probing the hem. There it was, a small, jagged stone sewn into the fabric, designed to rip the gown apart when the queen moved. Tawadros had planned to humiliate her publicly, framing her as a fraud. With minutes to spare, Chloe and Zala worked feverishly, cutting the stone free and reinforcing the hem. Sweat beaded on Chloe's forehead as she stitched, her hands shaking but precise. She'd faced tight deadlines before, fashion week crunch times, client meltdowns, but this was life or death. As the final stitch went in, the chamber door swung open, and Queen Azeb entered, her presence commanding silence. She was tall, her eyes sharp and unreadable, her traditional robes heavy with gold. The crowd parted, and Chloe felt the weight of every gaze. "This was it. Your Majesty," Chloe said, bowing low, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "This gown is my gift to you, a reflection of the stars and your divine power." She unveiled the gown, and a collective gasp filled the room. The indigo fabric shimmered, the embroidered stars catching the torchlight like a galaxy. Queen Azeb's eyes widened, a flicker of awe breaking her stoic mask. She stepped forward, her attendants dressing her with care. As the gown settled over her shoulders, it fit like a dream, the daring neckline accentuating her regal posture. the trailing hem flowing like a river of night. The room was silent, spellbound. But Tawadros wasn't done. As the queen turned to face the crowd, he stepped forward, his voice ringing out, "Your Majesty, beware. This woman's work is tainted. Let the gods judge her." He produced a small vial, claiming it was holy water to test the gown's purity. Chloe's heart stopped. She knew it wasn't water. It was likely a chemical to ruin the fabric, a final trap. Before she could protest, Tawadros splashed the liquid toward the gown. Chloe acted on instinct, throwing herself in front of the queen, the liquid hitting her instead. It burned her skin, acrid and sharp, but the gown was untouched. The crowd gasped, and Queen Azeb's eyes narrowed, her gaze shifting to Tawadros. "Enough!" the queen thundered, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You dare disrupt my festival with lies?" She turned to Chloe, her expression softening. "This gown is a marvel, Sky Woman. You have honored me." The attendants erupted in murmurs, and Tawadros's face paled. His plan had backfired. The queen's guard seized him, dragging him from the chamber as he shouted protests. Chloe, her arms stinging from the liquid, exhaled in relief, her knees weak. She'd done it. The gown was a triumph. As the festival began, the queen took center stage in the palace courtyard, her gown dazzling under the starlight. The crowd roared, their cheers a tidal wave of awe. Chloe stood at the edge, Zala by her side, her heart swelling with pride. She'd faced sabotage, betrayal, and impossible odds, and won. But as the night wore on, a new mystery emerged. In the chaos of the festival, a hooded figure slipped Chloe a small, carved stone, its surface etched with the same jagged spiral she'd seen on her loom. A whispered voice followed. "The light that brought you here. It's no accident. Find the oracle's cave." Chloe's breath caught. The shimmering light. The time jump. Was someone, or something, controlling her fate? As the festival's drums echoed into the night, Chloe clutched the stone, her mind racing. She'd conquered the queen's challenge, but a bigger one loomed. What was the oracle's cave? And what did it mean for her chance to return home? The Festival of the Stars had transformed Aksum into a glittering dream, its streets alive with firelight, music, and the rhythmic pulse of drums that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the ancient city. Chloe Evans, the time-displaced fashion designer from New York, stood at the edge of the palace courtyard, her eyes fixed on Queen Azeb as she moved through the crowd, her indigo gown shimmering like a piece of the night sky. The queen's every step was a testament to Chloe's triumph, a masterpiece of modern design and ancient craftsmanship that had silenced her doubters and foiled Tawadros' schemes. The merchant, now disgraced and banished from the palace, was a fading threat, his lies exposed by Chloe's daring and the queen's favor. But as the crowd's cheers washed over her, Chloe's fingers tightened around the small, etched stone in her pocket, its jagged spiral pressing into her palm like a warning. The hooded figure's words echoed in her mind. "The light that brought you here. It's no accident. Find the oracle's cave." Her victory was sweet, but a new mystery loomed, one that could unravel the very fabric of her existence in this strange world of 1000 AD Ethiopia. The night was far from over. As the festival reached its peak, Queen Azeb summoned Chloe to a private chamber within the palace, a room adorned with woven tapestries and flickering oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on the stone walls. The queen, still radiant in Chloe's gown, sat on a carved throne, her presence both regal and unnerving. Zala, Chloe's fierce weaver ally, stood nearby, her eyes wide with pride but tinged with caution. The air was heavy with incense and expectation, and Chloe felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a reward, it was a turning point. "You have honored me, Sky Woman," Queen Azeb said, her voice smooth but commanding, like a river hiding sharp rocks beneath its surface. "Your gift has brought glory to Aksum, and the stars themselves seem to sing your name tonight." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Chloe's. "I offer you a place in my court, as my chief weaver and advisor of beauty. Your talents are unlike any in my kingdom. Stay, and you will live as a noble, your name etched in our history." Chloe's heart raced. A place in the court? It was beyond anything she'd imagined when she'd stumbled into this world, a far cry from her cramped Brooklyn apartment and the cutthroat world of New York fashion. She could see it, a life of influence, surrounded by artisans, shaping Aksum's culture with her designs. She'd already transformed the market, turning it into her Aksum Fashion Week, and now she could redefine an empire's aesthetic. But as the queen's words hung in the air, the stone in Chloe's pocket seemed to burn, and the shimmering light that had brought her here flickered at the edge of her vision, brighter than ever. The oracle's cave, the mystery of her time jump. If she stayed, would she ever learn the truth? Could she live in this ancient world, never knowing why or how she'd been torn from her own? She bowed low, her mind a whirlwind. "Your Majesty, I'm honored beyond words," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "But I need a night to consider your offer. It's a lot to take in." The queen's eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion crossing her face, but she nodded. "One night, Sky Woman. Choose wisely." As Chloe and Zala left the chamber, the weight of the decision pressed on her. Stay and become a legend, or chase a mystery that might lead nowhere, or worse, to danger? Back at Zala's workshop, the air was thick with the scent of dye and flax, a familiar comfort amid the chaos of Chloe's thoughts. Zala, ever loyal, poured them both a cup of spiced barley drink, her sharp eyes studying Chloe. "You're not staying, are you?" she asked, her voice low. Chloe sighed, running her fingers over the etched stone. "I don't know, Zala. This place, it's incredible. I've done things here I never could have in New York. But that light, the cave, it's like something's calling me. What if it's my way home? Or the reason I'm here?" Zala's face softened, but before she could reply, a soft knock came at the workshop door. Chloe tensed, her hand instinctively gripping the stone. Tuwadros was gone, but his allies might still lurk. Zala opened the door, revealing a young boy, no older than 12, his eyes wide with urgency. "Sky Woman," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "The oracle's cave, it's real. My uncle saw it, in the hills beyond the obelisks. But it's forbidden. The priests say it's guarded by spirits." He thrust a scrap of cloth into Chloe's hand, its edges frayed, but marked with the same jagged spiral. "Someone left this for you at the market. They said you'd know." Chloe's pulse quickened. The cloth was coarse, unlike her designs, but the spiral matched the stone perfectly. She thanked the boy, who vanished into the night, and turned to Zala. "This is no coincidence," she said, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Someone wants me to find that cave. But why? And who?" Zala frowned, her fingers tracing the spiral. "The oracle's cave is a legend, Chloe. They say it holds secrets of the gods, truths about time and fate. But no one who's gone there has returned unchanged. If you go, you risk everything." The warning hung heavy, but Chloe's curiosity burned brighter. She'd faced Tuwadros' sabotage, the queen's ultimatum, and the weight of an entire kingdom's expectations, and won. This was different, though. The shimmering light that had brought her here wasn't just a fluke. It was a puzzle, and the oracle's cave might hold the pieces. But what would she find? A way back to New York? A truth about her purpose here? Or something darker? Something that could trap her in this time forever? As dawn approached, Chloe made her decision. She packed a small satchel with essentials, her sketching charcoal, a scrap of indigo fabric, and the etched stone. She left a note for Zala, promising to return if she could. "Keep the workshop running," she wrote. "Aksum Fashion Week needs you." With the festival's music still echoing in the distance, she slipped out of the city, following the boy's vague directions toward the hills beyond the obelisks. The air grew cooler as she climbed, the stars above blazing brighter than any New York skyline. Then she saw it, a faint, shimmering light pulsing at the mouth of a cave carved into the rocky hillside. The same light that had torn her from her world. Her heart pounded as she approached, the spiral on the stone glowing faintly in her hand. The cave's entrance was narrow, its walls etched with symbols that seemed to shift in the flickering light. A low hum filled the air, like a whisper from another time. Chloe took a deep breath, her New York hustle mixing with a newfound courage. Whatever lay inside, answers, danger, or destiny, she was ready to face it. But as she stepped into the cave, A shadow moved behind her, and a voice, low and familiar, hissed, "You should have stayed with the queen, Sky Woman." She spun around, but no one was there. The light pulsed brighter, and the cave seemed to swallow her whole. What was the Oracle's cave? Was it a portal, a trap, or the key to Chloe's journey? And who was following her, lurking in the shadows? One thing was certain. Her story was far from over. Chloe's journey has only just begun. What secrets lie within the Oracle's cave? Will she find her way back to New York, or uncover a truth that changes everything? Subscribe and stay tuned for the next chapter, where the mystery deepens and the stakes get higher. You won't want to miss what happens next.